The Panthers have hired their next head coach, Frank Reich. Reich started the first game in Carolina's franchise history in 1995, and now he's the team's sixth head coach. The Panthers had 9 different candidates, but it eventually came down to 2, Frank Reich and Steve Wilks. Carolina started last season with Matt Rule as the head coach entering his 3rd year, but he was quickly fired after a 1-4 start. Wilks ended up being named the interim and led the Panthers to a 6-6 record and did nearly make the playoffs, but that was more due to a weak NFC South division. Wilks was a heavy favorite to get the job, especially among players, but I do think the Panthers are making the right decision by moving on from him. Wilks had a disastrous 1 season as the head coach of the Cardinals in 2018. More importantly, the vast majority of teams in today's league have offensive-minded head coaches. Reich has had success with young quarterbacks and old quarterbacks. He made Carson Wentz look like an MVP candidate and made old Phillip Rivers look like he still had it. There's been a track record of success there, and Reich knows what it's like to be there. Frank Reich played quarterback at Maryland, and he was the backup to 1988 NFL MVP Boomer Esiason for 3 years. Esiason left for the pros in 1984, and Reich became the starter. He was selected in the 3rd round by the Buffalo Bills after his only season starting in college. Reich played for the Bills for 9 years. He only started in 8 games, and he was the backup to Hall of Famer Jim Kelly. Reich famously led the biggest postseason comeback in NFL history, coming back from down 32 to beat the Oilers in the 1992 wild card. It was the biggest comeback in NFL history until the Vikings came back from down 33 to beat the Colts this past season. Reich did play in Super Bowl 27 after an injury to Kelly. When the Panthers expanded to the league in 1995, they drafted Kerry Collins to hopefully be their franchise quarterback, but Reich actually started the first 3 games of Carolina's season. He started 7 games for the Jets the following season and started 2 in 1998, his 2nd season in Detroit, before he retired. Frank Reich began his coaching career in 2006 as a coaching intern for the Colts. He spent 6 seasons in Indianapolis and ended up serving as the quarterback's coach and later the wide receivers coach. Reich ended up being the wide receivers coach for the Cardinals under Ken Whisenhunt. Whisenhunt ended up getting fired and was hired to be the offensive coordinator for the Chargers. Reich followed and became his quarterback's coach. Whisenhunt only spent 1 year in San Diego before becoming the Titans head coach, which led to Reich being promoted to OC. Reich was fired after 2 seasons in the role, as the Chargers offense did struggle. He was hired to be the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, and he won a Super Bowl in 2017. Reich was hired to be the head coach of the Colts after the season. He spent 5 years in Indianapolis. The Colts had a winning record 3 times and won a single postseason game. If there was a single thing that summed up his time in Indianapolis, it was the carousel of quarterbacks. Reich inherited Andrew Luck, who retired after his first season as head coach. Jacoby Brissett was the starter in 2019 after his surprise retirement. The Colts signed aging Phillip Rivers the following offseason, traded for Carson Wentz in 2021, and traded for Matt Ryan last offseason. Somehow, Reich did finish with a winning record in Indianapolis, 40-33-1. He was fired after starting the 2022 season 3-5-1. The biggest issue for Frank Reich in Indianapolis was quarterback, and he's back with the same problem in Carolina. The Panthers only have 1 quarterback under contract for the 2023 season. 2022 3rd-round pick Matt Corral. He did not play as a rookie due to a foot injury. It's not a secret that quarterback is a big issue in Carolina. I think the Panthers are going to look for a QB at the draft, and it appears that the experts agree. Carolina has the 9th pick at the draft. Daniel Jeremiah mocked the Panthers to select Ohio State's C.J. Stroud. Stroud is big, strong, and accurate. He showed flashes versus Georgia in the college football playoff. Mel Kiper had a much more interesting mock. Florida's Anthony Richardson. He has plenty of intrigue and worries surrounding him. Richardson is a raw talent. He has size and physical tools that can't be taught, but his mechanics do need some work. He has a very high ceiling, but needs to develop. Kiper said he would not play Richardson as a rookie. That leaves the Panthers in need of a bridge quarterback. Bringing back Sam Darnold in the offseason may make some sense. The Panthers are going to be rebuilding next season. That's the reality. The draft is going to be big for Carolina. That first rounder is obviously the most important, but the Panthers have 6 more picks. 2 seconds, a third, 2 fourths, and a 5th. That Christian McCaffrey trade fetched 3 of those and a 5th next year. The Panthers were in sell mode ahead of the deadline, but held on to some important pieces that Carolina is going to build around. The Panthers used their first-round pick last year on Akeem Ekwonu. He played pretty well as a rookie at left tackle, and he has a bright future ahead. Opposite of Ekwonu is right tackle Taylor Moton. He's been great in Carolina. He's locked up through the 2025 season at $17.8 million per season. Austin Corbett also played well at right guard in his first year in Carolina after signing a 3-year, $26.25 million contract last offseason. At the very least, the Panthers' offensive line is in a solid spot. DJ Moore is obviously an important player in Carolina. He did have a down season, but I would credit that to the quarterback situation more than anything. Before last season, he did have 3 straight seasons with over 1,000 yards. His contract runs through 2025 at $20.6 million per season. The Panthers' defense has a lot of issues, but there are some very big positives to build around. Brian Burns is the big one. He had a career-high 12.5 sacks, and he made the Pro Bowl for the second time. He's become one of the better pass rushers in the league, and I loved him at the 2019 draft. I wanted Washington to take him at 15, and Burns ended up going at the next pick to Carolina. Derek Brown took that next step. He was a 2020 first rounder, and he did improve dramatically in 2022. JC Horn didn't really play as a rookie because he suffered a fractured foot, but this season he showed that he belonged, and he was very impressive as the top cornerback. It will be interesting to see what happens at linebacker. Shaq Thompson has been a staple for that defense for years and is still playing at a high level, but I think he's going to be a cap casualty to save some money. It helps that Frankie Louvu kind of broke out this season too. Frank Reich definitely has some good pieces to work with day one. I like but don't love the hire of Frank Reich. The Panthers was the first head coach vacancy to get settled. 3 have been filled at this point. Sean Payton to the Broncos and D'Amico Ryans to the Texans. If I had to rank the 3, I would put Carolina's hiring dead last. Payton has proven he is an elite head coach in the past, and Ryans is the young, exciting name, and there's a lot of excitement around him. Reich is the one guy that we should have some form of knowledge about. His time in Indianapolis is looked at poorly, but I think there was a lot of good. I think Reich could have really succeeded if it weren't for the lack of a true starting quarterback, and that's why I worry about the Panthers. For 4 years after the retirement of Andrew Luck, it was a constant cycle of trying to find that guy, and hopefully that's not the case in Carolina. Whether it's CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, or trading up for Bryce Young, it is so important that Reich finds a franchise quarterback. If that doesn't happen, I have a hard time believing that Reich will last more than a few seasons. He is an offensive-minded head coach, and that is the side of the ball that needs to perform above all else. I think Carolina is going to be terrible in the first few years under Reich, but ultimately just get stuck in mediocrity. A young quarterback being the answer is what may keep Reich around for a long time, but I certainly wouldn't call it a home run hire. I understand it, and I think it makes plenty of sense, but I don't love it. I like Frank Reich, and I like the Panthers, but I don't know that this works out. Quarterback has been the problem for Reich, and if he can't find that guy, I expect another failed head coaching tenure.